Hey all, Tom Moran here from Tom's Big Spider. So this episode we're going to be taking a look at my Aphonopelma species. Now I have to be honest, for many years when I first got into the hobby, I actually avoided any Aphonopelma species. My thing was I obviously live in North America. These are a North American genus of tarantulas. And I just didn't find them very exciting because they were could be found locally. It just seemed like having something that could be found in the United States was kind of boring. I was completely wrong on that one. And after several years and seeing many of these species out and about and in other folks' collections, I realized the error that I had made. So what I started doing was tracking some of them down around 2016, 2017 or so. And now I have quite a few of them. And I'm loving them. However, one of the things that always comes up with Aphonopelma species is the fact that they are very slow growing. It tends to be a running joke for those of us who love Aphonopelma that they seem to actually lose size every time they molt. When folks ask me what some of the slowest growing tarantulas are out there, I always have to bring up the Aphonopelma. And if we're talking about the three genera where they're considered to be good beginner genera of tarantulas, and I'm talking about Brachypelma, Grammostola, or Aphonopelma, in my collection, the Aphonopelma have been the slowest growing one. So you'll hear me talking about that through the video, but it's kind of tongue-in-cheek because honestly, they're fun to keep regardless. They just require a bit of patience. Now, the last time I updated these guys was November of 2019. At that time, I rehoused a bunch of my smaller ones, and I've had many folks asking me over the last couple of years when I'm going to do another update on them. And I kept telling them there really isn't anything to update. They look exactly the same. However, in the last year or so, several of them have molted, and they're at least showing something other than that tan coloration that the slings sport. So I think it's a good time now to kind of update and see what's going on with them. So enough of me talking. Let's take a look at my Aphonopelma species. All right, so first up, we have one of my prettiest ones, my Aphonopelma bicoloratum, or Mexican bloodleg. The common name comes from the fact that, well, they're from Mexico, and the females sport a reddish hue on their legs. As you can see with this one here, she's already starting to show some of those colors, which really, they are gorgeous spiders when you look up pictures of them online. Almost look a bit like bleached out Brachypelma bamies. As a matter of fact, when I first looked up photos of these, I think a lot of the photos I was looking at were actually bamies that somebody put up and said it was a bicoloratum, but who cares? All the pictures I've seen of them, it's a gorgeous species. Now, this is actually the second one I'm raising up. The first one I got as a teeny tiny sling when I got my other ones, and it reached about 1.75 inches. It molted, and I waited a week or so to go try to feed it. It was spread out almost like this one here on its substrate. And when I opened up the top of the enclosure and checked on it, I realized it had died. I was absolutely gutted. No reason why it died. The conditions were fine. She was doing great. But I decided at that point I definitely needed to get another one. So luckily I went to a reptile show and picked this one up for my buddy Caleb last summer. At that point, she was about 1 inch or 2.54 centimeters. And so far she's molted, I believe, 2 times. And right now in these photos here, she's about 1.5 inches or 3.81 centimeters. So the good news is she's putting on a lot of size quickly, especially compared to some of my other Aphonopelma species. And she's showing those colors, because that was the thing I was so upset about, is I had finally raised my last one to the point where those adult colors were showing up, and she passed away. So that one really hurt. So this one here right now is in one of those 4x4 by about 1.5 inches containers that you can put slings in that have a little hatch on the top. She's going to be getting rehoused very, very soon into something a little different with a little more depth, probably a 16-ounce container or something of that size. I will probably put a layer of moist substrate on the bottom and drier substrate on the top, because I found with many of my Aphonopelma species, although folks will talk about the fact that they come from arid regions, they do get rainfall, A, and B, a lot of them will burrow down to where the substrate is a little bit more moist. So I have found in the past that when I give them that option to burrow down to the moist substrate, it does trigger that type of behavior. And again, I want them comfortable. I want them burrowing. So we'll give this one that type of setup and see what she does. I have a funny feeling she's going to do some digging, because lately, every time I moisten down a corner of the substrate in this enclosure, she hangs around it. So Aphonopelma bicoloratum, this one is easily one of my favorites, hoping she continues to grow, put on good size, and hopefully I have a nice, big, robust female pretty soon. And here we have a spider that's rapidly becoming one of my all-time favorites, the Aphonopelma barica, or Costa Rican bluefront. This also gets my vote for the absolute worst common name ever in the hobby. I'm sorry, I have to throw it out there. The bluefront just kills me. But anyway, I got this one in April of 2021, and at that time it was around 1 inch, maybe a little over 1 inch or so, or 2.54 centimeters. This one has put on size rather quickly, as you can see here, and I actually had to rehouse it from its vial in November of 2022. At that time, she was right around the 3-inch mark or so. Right now, she's probably slightly over 3 inches, but we'll say 3 inches at 7.62 centimeters. Now, this is a gorgeous spider. I believe the reason why they call it the blue front is, as you can see in those front legs there is a beautiful blue tone to it. And if you hit them in the right light, it really kind of shines. Really awesome spiders. Now, something I do want to point out about this one that might help folks that are raising it is I did notice when I moved it into the enclosure that it's in now, or that she's in now, it's an 8x8x7 barbarous growth enclosure. I gave her about 3.5 inches of substrate to burrow in, and she immediately burrowed, which is great. We want that kind of behavior. However, I did notice that after burrowing, she was eating great, filled up her burrow, and then I waited. Months went by, and I didn't see any sign of her. And finally, I shined a flashlight in, and she had molted. It looked like a while back, and she was in that burrow, hadn't resurfaced, and was very, very, very thin. And I've mentioned before that as I've kept more species in the hobby, this doesn't happen often, but I've had a handful of these guys that will burrow, they will molt, and they will not come back up to find prey. Now, the thought process behind this is that in the wild, if they burrow deeply enough, they will find prey items, insects that live under the ground, earthworms and such there, so they don't have to surface, which is why they don't surface in captivity. And I did notice with this one that even at one point, she had kind of a burrow up the side. She had closed up like the top inch of it, and she was sitting there. I dropped prey items and watched the prey items run over the top, so she should have been aware that they were there, and she didn't come back up to get them. So whenever this happens, obviously I wait a little while to make sure they're not just hardening up after a molt. What I did was moisten down the area around where the mouth of her burrow was, take the back of a paintbrush and open up the burrow, and I pre-killed prey and dropped it right at the top of the burrow. So what happens in these situations is one of two things. Either they're going to come up, they're not hungry, and they're going to close the burrow back up, or in a situation like with this one here, what she did was she came up, grabbed the prey item, ate it, and closed the burrow again. So I opened the burrow again, and at that point, I dropped down a live prey item on top. She came up, ate it. She ate a couple more times, and then closed it off again. And I have noticed when I went to get video of her for this video here, she had once again closed her burrow off. I opened it up, dropped a pre-killed prey item in there, and she ate it immediately. So she's still doing that. So something to keep in mind, something I'm going to need to keep an eye out for. What I found with spiders that do this, though, once they put on their adult size, this doesn't become an issue anymore. It seems to only be an issue normally with juveniles or slings. And I think the reason why is probably because as juveniles and slings, they are much more in risk of being predated on by larger animals, whether it be birds, lizards, whatever they've got in that environment. And so they try to hide more. So I will definitely catalog what happens as time goes on and see how it goes. I'm kind of hoping she'll abandon this behavior because it's kind of a pain in the butt opening up every time to feed her, but I'll keep doing it as long as it's necessary. And here we have one of my Aphonopelma calcotus, or Arizona blondes. This one here I picked up as a second instar sling in the summer of 2018. At the time, she was about 1/3 of an inch, or 0.85 centimeters. And to be completely honest, I almost passed on her because I already had an Aphonopelma, another one we'll see in a minute, but I didn't grow this one up from a sling. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to grab a smaller specimen, grow it up, and be able to talk about the husbandry for it. Now, this one has surprised me because out of all of the Aphonopelma I've kept, especially the ones I got as slings, and considering the other Aphonopelma calcotus I had, I assumed it was going to take forever for this one to reach a decent amount of size. However, she's grown fairly quickly overall. As you can see here, she's now about 1.75 inches or 4.45 centimeters or so, which is pretty good size, which is about the same size as my other Aphonopelma that I got back as a sexed female several years ago. And she's already showing some of her adult colors, which is amazing because I honestly didn't think I was going to see those adult colors for quite some time. Even more amazing, this is the second molt that she's shown adult colors on. She actually started showing her adult colors when she hit about 1.5 inches. She looked like a little teeny tiny Aphonopelma calcotus adult, which is fantastic. Now, the one thing I will say with this one, she's always been a pretty good eater. At first, I had her in a small deli cup and I would drop in pre-killed red runner roaches. She'd eat them with no problem. As she got bigger, she would take prey items that are normally the size of prey items I would give specimens of this size. And the reason I say that is because, as you'll see with some of my other Aphonopelma species, I have to give them either pre-killed or smaller prey items. And I think that might have helped with her growth rate. Maybe getting her during the summertime and giving her a good head start where it was nice and warm in the tarantula room helped as well. Whatever the situation, I'm loving growing this one up, and I'm loving the fact that I can see those adult colors on her. Now, we'll see how it goes from here on in. If she continues to grow at this rate, I'm quite frankly could have an adult on my hands in a couple years or so, which would be fantastic, because at that point, then we can do a full husbandry video on it and talk about how the fact that we grew this one up all the way from a little tiny baby into a big adult. Now, the next one we have here is the infamous Nikki. This was my Aphonopelma calcotus. It was originally sold to me as a Aphonopelma schmidti, but I believe they rolled schmidti into calcotus. I got her back, and I was actually shocked at this, October of 2013, as, again, a 1 3/4 inch sling or 4.45 centimeter specimen. And she has been incredibly slow growing. Again, I can't believe it's been 10 years, and in all of that time, she's reached a whopping, we'll go about 3 inches or 7.62 centimeters. She may be a little bit bigger than that, but right around the 3-inch mark. Now, when I first got her, she immediately burrowed. She didn't eat that all well. She was one of the few spiders I've ever kept that would eat sometimes and then other times refuse it. She would also only eat much smaller prey items, or they had to be pre-killed. So, for example, if I dropped the small cricket in with her, she might be afraid of it, but if I killed the cricket, she'd eventually come over and eat it. She would also bury herself in November and then re-emerge in mid-April. And she did this for 3 years straight. And the days in mid-April, I believe, were the 14th, the 8th, and the 7th. And that's when she popped up. So almost to the date, she would pop back up. I have a funny feeling, sadly, that this was probably a wild-caught specimen, hence why she continued that behavior, because in the wild, this is a species that is in a location where it's going to get quite cold. So they're going to burrow down for the winter months and then come out in the spring and start eating again. So that's what we were seeing there. But I love this spider. Again, her name is Nikki because when she was little, she had a gigantic booty. So we named her after Nicki Minaj because that's how we roll around here. But absolutely, easily one of my favorite spiders. Lots of spunky attitude. Every time I go to check on her, she's one of the few spiders I have that will run out to investigate, which is always endearing because, again, I'm not saying it shows intelligence, but in my mind, when you're anthropomorphizing them, it makes them seem a little brighter than the other spiders. But Nikki is awesome. Love this spider. Glad to have an A. calcotus in my collection that somewhat looks like an adult, even though if right now she kind of looks like a dwarf adult. And here we have Aphonopelma utilenum, or the California ebony. Now, if you look up pictures of this spider, the females look a bit like the A. calcotus with the tans and browns. However, the males are much, much darker. And I have a funny feeling this is probably where the common name came from, ebony, because the females are definitely not black. However, this one here is finally starting to show a bit of color, which I hope means it's going to be a lady. Fingers crossed. It's one of the things about the Aphonopelma species, especially if you only get one of them, is that it's a long time to wait till you know if you have a male or a female. Now, this one here I picked up at about a 1/2 inch back in January of 2021. It was about 1.27 centimeters or so. Right now, she just molted again, showing some beautiful colors off. And she's maybe about 1 inch or 2.54 centimeters or so, maybe slightly larger. It's hard to tell. But again, showing some color, which is great. That's the biggest, I hate to say issue, but that's the thing that's been the most difficult with raising up the Aphonopelmas, is that they spend a long time looking like brown slings. Last video I did, all of these guys are brown slings. At least we're seeing some colors in there. Now, this one here is currently in one of the 3x3x3 inch tarantula crib sling cubes. She burrowed down the bottom. What I did was set her up with a little moist substrate on the bottom, dry substrate on top, gave her a starter burrow. And like many of my Aphonopelma species, she seemed to gravitate down toward that moist area. And that's where she keeps her burrow. Now what I do is I moisten down a corner and I let things dry out a little bit, moisten down a corner, and she seems to like that. So far, she's eating better now that she's molted. I actually dropped in some live prey the other day, some red runner roaches, little ones, and she hunted them no problem. Before that, there was a lot of pre-killed going on because like the other ones, she seemed to be a little bit shy, a little bit skittish when it came to prey items. But she's eating better now. She's putting on some size. She's showing adult colors. I'm hoping that she's turned a corner and we're going to get some really good growth from now on. And I'm going to apologize now for the not so great footage coming up, but this is my Aphonopelma hensi or Texas Brown. Really excited about getting this one grown up because I love the way the adults look. As an adult, this species sports gorgeous earthy browns and tans. However, this little guy or gal here is content on being a brown sling for as long as it can. As you can see here, it's trying to climb up some of the substrate, which is good because it kind of gave us a look of it, because before this, I couldn't get it out of its burrow long enough to get any footage of it. But right now, overall brown coloration, at least it's showing some color, some hair. It's looking like a little tarantula. But I picked this one up in the mid-2017 or so at about a ½ an inch or 1.27 centimeters. Right now, it's right around, probably slightly short of, but we'll say right around the 1 inch or 2.54 centimeter mark. So finally, again, turning the corner. I found with a lot of the slower growing species, once they hit around an inch or so, they seem to molt a bit more frequently, and they seem to put a bit more size on with each molt. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for here, that this one will start putting on a little more size from this point forward. Once again, this one was a shyer eater. I still have to give it pre-killed prey items or let it scavenge feed. The other day, I did drop in a little teeny tiny red runner roach nymph, really small one, much more than I'd normally feed a specimen of this size, and it did pounce on it, so I have hopes that maybe from then on, it'll start hunting a little bit better, and that might be one of the reasons why it's growing so slowly. But still, really cute little one. As you can see here, I'm just trying to get it up with the brush so we can get some pictures of it, but unfortunately, it says, the heck with this, I'm going to get out of here, tries to escape later on. But really liking this one so far. As you can see here, her booty's looking quite large, so I'm hoping that a molt is imminent, that we're going to get some more size out of this one and maybe some of the adult colorations. Again, one of the reasons why I chose now to do this video is because they're finally starting to look a little bit like their adult color counterparts, and that's what it's all about. But as I try to focus the camera here, still brown, not showing any of that adult coloration. We'll have to see how it goes for the next molt. So right now, this is one of the only ones that I still have in one of the larger Matchbox car or Hot Wheels car containers. I put all of them into one of those a ways back when I did my last update video. I have since moved all of them out, but this one, I'm going to wait for the next molt to move her. And that point, you'll probably get something around 16 ounces or so, something a little bit bigger with the moist substrate in the bottom, some dry substrate in the top, and we'll see what she does. All right, and here we have my Aphonopelma moderatum or Rio Grande Gold. The adult females of this species are gorgeous, sporting orangey golds on their legs. I'm not going to lie, however, I'm a little worried because I honestly thought these would be showing some of that color by now. They are still quite dark. I did notice that the other specimen, when I got it under the right light, is starting to show some different colors as far as its legs and its carapace. So hopefully that's a step in the right direction, but I'm really hoping I get one of those ladies because they are stunning. Now, these guys here, like a couple of the other specimens we're featuring, I picked up mid-2017 as ½ slings or 1.27 centimeter slings. Right now, both of them are around 1 3/4 inches or 4.45 centimeters. So they're entering that juvenile size. As you can see here, you can see the hairs. It's starting to look like a little tarantula. It's just not sporting the colors or the patterning that I was hoping for. So we'll see. I hate to be a pessimist, but I have had situations in the past where I've picked up slow-growing species only to find out several years later that they sent me the wrong species. This happened with a Brachypelma albiceps that was actually a T. vagans, again, like the vagans, but I wanted that albiceps. And by the time I found out, it was time to start over completely with another sling. So fingers crossed. But as you can see there, you can see the carapace is a little bit lighter. There are some darker colorations on the femurs. Fingers crossed these turn out being the right spiders. It's funny because it wasn't until I shot this video and then started looking up pictures of the adults again that I started to worry. But anyway, like the other one, these here are in the acrylic cylinders. They're about 16 ounces or so. You can pick them up on Amazon or I think from Hobby Lobby. I gave them about 2.5 inches of substrate. I keep part of it moist at all time. They've done some burrowing, but since they put on some size, I find them usually right around the surface, which is awesome because they are pretty. And these ones have eaten pretty well and are taking live prey and reasonably sized prey, which is good. So fingers crossed, we'll get another molt out of them before the summer ends, and we'll see some of those adult colors. All right, and this next spider here was all the rage several years back, and now they're very difficult to find, but this is the Aphonopelma moray, or the Mexican Jade Fuego. The reason why they have the name Jade Fire is because as adults, the females at least, and I believe the males as well, look a lot like the C. pubescens or the GBB, with brilliant greens and blues, just very colorful for the normally more earthy toned Aphonopelma. Now, I picked this one up late in 2018. She was about a 1/2 inch or so, or 1.27 centimeters. And I was really, really hoping to get some good growth rate out of these because I knew folks were looking for husbandry videos on them. Unfortunately, she has been one of the slowest growing Aphonopelma I have kept. Right now, she is about 3/4 inches or 1.9 centimeters. She just molted about a month ago, put on an okay amount of size. And like I did with my last 2 or 3 molts with her, I had myself convinced that she was showing some adult colors because right after the molt, there almost seemed to be a bluish tinge to her. That's a pipe dream. She's not showing the colors yet. Now, for whatever reason, mine is growing very, very slowly. However, I just spoke to somebody that apparently picked one of these up the same time I did, and hers is currently 1.75 inches and already sporting some color. She sent me a picture of it, and I don't mind saying that I was turning green with jealousy. No, I'm just kidding. I was very jealous, though, because I'm dying to see the coloration on these guys, and I know that there's some other folks that have ones that are growing more slowly like mine, but I've also spoken to other people that picked theirs up about the same time I did, and they're showing those adult colors. So here you can see not too much going on as far as colors, but what I'm hoping once again is to fatten her up, and perhaps by the end of the summer or so, I can get another molt out of her, at which point maybe we'll start seeing some greens and blues. Gosh, I hope so. But either way, again, part of the fun with the Aphonopelma species, and I should make this clear because I know I'm bemoaning the fact that they're so slow growing, is the fact that when you do get one start showing the adult colors after having it be that teeny tiny sling for years, it's so satisfying. And I think a lot of my favorite spiders over the years have been the ones that took me forever to grow up to adults or young adults. So I have a funny feeling it's going to be the same thing here with these Aphonopelma. So don't worry, I haven't written them off. I'm not bitter. I just can't wait to see what they look like when they're adults. And last but definitely not least is my female Aphonopelma Simani, or Costa Rican zebra tarantula. I love this girl. I picked this one up as a juvenile back in March of 2017. At the time, she was right around the 3-inch or 7.62 centimeter mark. Since then, she has molted 4 times in my care, and she's now a good size 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. As a matter of fact, this is slightly older footage because she just molted again about a month ago, and she is yet to come out of her burrow. I almost caught her out hunting. I'll show a little image here. I caught her sitting right at the mouth of her burrow, but she hasn't given me any opportunities to get new footage of her. Now, one thing to mention with this species is that a lot of folks will say that theirs will actually do burrowing right on through adulthood. It seems to me that the ones that are wild-caught specimens, and I do believe this one sadly was probably a wild-caught specimen, tend to do the burrowing and continue the burrowing as they get older. I know other folks that have raised captive bred slings that they said they don't seem to be inclined to burrow at all. So what I usually like to do with these guys is I give them some deep substrate. Once again, I keep the bottom moist, give them a starter burrow, see what they want to do. This was a species that back in the day people said was more moisture dependent. I will say now that some of them don't seem to care about moisture whatsoever. This one I will moisten down part of the substrate, let it dry out in between, and she has a water dish up top. But right now she's in an 8x8 by 12 inch glass enclosure, and she's got about 7 or 8 inches of substrate. She's dug a nice vertical burrow, cleaned out the whole bottom, and that's where she usually sits and hides. But as you can see here, this one does sport a little bit of blue on them. I've heard that there are different color forms, a brown color form, a black color form, a blue color form. I've also heard that the blue is just something that immature or younger specimens will sport and that they'll outgrow it as they get older. We'll see how it goes. Right now, she's still showing a little bit of it, but she's darkened up quite a bit. But love this spider. Fun fact, the second tarantula I ever got back in the mid-90s was actually an Aphonopelma Simani. Unfortunately, it was a mature male, so it only lasted about 2 years. So this species has an extra special place in my heart. So again, those are the ones I was able to catch out and about, and they are all doing rather well. And again, I'm hoping with the warm summer weather, we'll get some more molts out of them, maybe one more time each, I'm hoping. And for some of those smaller ones, we'll actually take a step closer to having their adult colors, because they really are beautiful species. I know a lot of them have those earthy brown tones and the tans, which I happen to find very attractive. I know some other folks don't, but hey, to each his or her own. However, there are the ones like the Maury that have the blues and the greens, or the bloodleg that has the gorgeous reddish coloration, rusty coloration to its legs. Just amazing spiders overall. But I think when picking up a Aphonopelma species, you have to understand that patience is the key. For folks who are just getting into the hobby, picking up slings of the species in hopes of starting slowly and working with the beginner species, for a lot of us, by the time they get to the size where they would be young adults, we've already gone and picked up a million other species in the hobby and have even kept old worlds that take that long to grow. So just have that in the back of your head when you pick them up. But I think anybody that is into a Aphonopelma will tell you they are 100% totally worth it. And finally, to head this question off, every time I do one of these videos focusing on a certain genus of tarantulas, somebody will come forward and go, I don't get it. Why don't you keep this one? And they're like personally offended that I don't keep it. Just recognize I'm trying to keep as many species as I can as I go on through the hobby, and that I only have so much space and there's only so much I can buy. So I will, if you think there's something I should check out in the future, by all means, leave a comment. Let me know which ones I should check out. These are the ones I have now. I will say I'm getting up there. So the idea of picking up slings in the next, couple of years or so, I got to keep in mind that I could be leaving these to my grandkids by the time they're adults. So that's something I do got to, kind of pay attention to. But please feel free to let me know which Aphonopelma species you keep, which ones you love, and the growth rates. You have super fast growing ones or yours like mine that they're growing slowly. Let me know. So that will do it for this one. As always, if you'd like it enough to subscribe, you know the deal. Click the little circle over here. I'll put some other videos over there. You take the time to comment. I'll take the time to respond. It can just take me a couple days. Guys, stay safe. Catch you all next time.